As some of you know, the current tournament going on right now is the chess candidates, and last week I did a game of Topalov. The only other player in the field who has been a world champion and who's playing like he's a champion is, Viswanathan Anand from India, 5-time world champion, and he's playing really well, and I've often counted him out in recent tournaments, and he's proving me wrong. So I decided I would cover one of his games. Kramnik and Anand and Topalov, one common feature between both those players is they both became world champions after Kasparov retired. And that's a big thing to kind of note. Kasparov had, pretty good scores against both of them, and it did open up the field a bit. It was a very highly competitive field afterwards. There's no necessarily clear number one when Kasparov retired. And I'm going to look at Game 5 of their match in 2008. Kramnik's white, Anand is black. I believe it was in Germany, the match. And at this point, I think Anand, by Game 5, is up one win in the match. So he was leading. D4, D5, C4, C6. They were playing a lot of Slavs this tournament, or this match. As you know, it's chess fashion. It depends on the time, but often you'll see the same opening over and over, and then they'll stop playing it the next year. So at this time, this was quite popular. And Kramnik, of course, is mainly a D4 player these days, but one of the best theoretically. E6, E3. So these are all main moves, and this could be turned into the Meran, but yeah, this is all theory that's been going on for a long time. And at this point, after knight b to d7, black's moves are normal. White has a few different options here: queen c2, bishop d3, b3. They all have some benefits. Depends on your taste. And in this match and in this game, Kramnik was giving preference to bishop d3. Queen c2, the benefit of that is, black usually delays taking on c4. After bishop d3, it's pretty immediate. Black takes because white's already just spent a move developing their bishop. So you take on c4. You wait for them to develop the bishop to take on c4. After bishop c4, b5, bishop d3, a6. So one of the main lines here. There's also bishop b7, but yeah, they were going into this quite a bit. This is just still the opening phase in their preparation. a6, you want to play c5 next move. Simple as that. You just want to play c5 and not have b5 hanging. Yeah, it's an opening I've never played too much, but back then I think both Kramnik and Anand were playing this opening as black, so they're both very well versed here. So, one sec. And the most principled line for white here is e4. Black played a6, white immediately takes action in the center. And now, okay, at one point this was a scary move for black players to deal with, but now modern theory is c5 anyways. After e5, the other move would be d5. It's still being played these days. c4 and this line, this line is still, some people you can go for this. It's going to be a little bit different. White usually takes on e6. Black plays moves like, I think queen c7 and knight c5. It's double-edged, but but a couple players still play it. I'll say it's fallen out of fashion for the most part, but there's a couple players who play it. E5, which is what Kramnik chose, is the only other real continuation. You would not want to, you know, take and allow knight c5. You just know you play e4 to play e5 right away. Now, if black had to play something like knight d5, knight takes d5, I think pawn d5, and probably just castling. This is not the setup for black. Black usually wants that bishop to have a nice diagonal here. Here you can't even like castle. You have to watch out for knight g5 ideas. It would not be the way to go. C takes d4, and this line. Now I believe knight takes b5. You can take here, but after d takes c3, let's say fg7, bishop g7, black is doing very well here. Knight c5 is coming just ahead in development and up a pawn. So pawn takes, knight takes b5, a takes b5. Now I remember this game I was watching live. I was about 16 at the time in a FIDE Master. So this was the first World Championship match I had watched where I was, I'd say, a decent chess player. 2 years previous, when they had the last one, I was like 1800. So at least when I was a FIDE Master, I could understand a little bit more of what was going on. So I was following this match. This was the first match I actually followed a bit carefully, and this one reason why I picked this game is I think it was my favorite game during the match. I do remember watching it. I got in trouble at school for having a tab with the chess games hidden, but I would bring it up whenever the teacher would move away in computer class. But I got caught a few times, and they're like, you know, you can't play games during class. I'm like, I'm not playing games. This is chess, and I'm even just watching. But couldn't really explain to the teacher what I was doing. So I got in trouble a few times during that match, but it was the first one I got into. But yeah, this is an old line. You got guys like Bogaljubov, Botvinnik, they're all playing this. So the theory here is quite developed. And so this white's going to castle. Black has, you know, a bit worse king position, but some tactical, you know, counterplay. Queen b6, bishop b7. It's rook g8. It's a sharp line, and I, you know, that's the. It was nice in that sense that you know, these days right now we're not maybe seeing as many games go into like some position like this that's so sharp, and that they're just playing a position here. You know, white's down a pawn with lots of compensation. He's probably going to get it back actually, but like there aren't too many games these days played at the top level that will resemble this type of position or variation. We'll get into a couple moves later, and it's pretty exciting. There's a lot of possibilities. So after castling, queen b6 is a move. Remember, you can't take on b5 because of queen a5 check, and well, yeah. Knight takes here. Trying to remember what happens after knight takes d4. There's usually an issue with this type of move. Knight e5, bishop b5, check. Well. Black might just actually be giving up the next pawn as well. I will not say something off here. I'll just say, yeah, there's something wrong with knight takes d4 here. I'm pretty sure it's queen b6. And for example, here, okay, first of all, you're not going to probably play a move like knight b5, because after like bishop b7, castles, rook g8, okay, this is the type of compensation, or this is why the opening is really dangerous. So, you know, maybe queen b6, maybe bishop b5 here. Maybe, I don't know, bishop b4 check. Yeah, I think, you know, it's very concrete, but black is getting a lot of compensation after knight takes d4. Queen b6. I think there's just a lot of compensation is coming. Anyways, I don't think white's supposed to take on b5, so white wants to be down a pawn with that activity for now. So anyways, this knight takes d4 would be possible, but there's a reason they didn't go for it. So now castles. And queen b6. Queen, yeah, the queen just goes to b6. It doesn't get hit on the c file. Bishop's always going to b7. It helps that. And, you know, the knight's on d7, so knight takes d4 is not possible with some sort of discovered bishop b5 check. Queen e2. Bishop a6. What would white be playing? I think just the direct a4 here. You know, if you play b4, probably even a5. Queen has to move off of it, and then d4 will probably hang, plus black's just, I mean, losing some time. Just a4, you know. The compensation for white's development is apparent here. So you can't be too greedy, and I think Anand was going for bishop b7, which is what he played for activity and just a really sharp middle game. Also, there's moves like, I'm not even sure, a move like rook b8, a4 could be played as well, but even moves like bishop f4, probably you don't want to give. Black really enjoys the structure f6, e6. It covers all the center squares. If you have to play some move like this, it's a bit more double-edged, but now all the light squares are weak, and you know, castling is no longer an option. It's not a move you want to make. So yeah, after bishop a6, a4 is pretty annoying.
Did you say e5 is a move you don't want to make?
Yeah, e5 is a move you don't want to make. Oops, sorry. e5, it weakens f5. Now the queen and bishop can line up on. It's just the pawns are no longer flexible. It's and here in this case, not really even threatening to take. But yeah, I would just think it's a little too loosening. See, because in a position like this, or we'll see what happens in the game, black's king gets stuck in the center, but it's really hard to break the formation of e6, f6. Once you put something on e5, there's sacrifices, but there's also ideas like knight h4, knight f5. There's some annoying, I don't know, for me, I just don't like, yeah. But anyways, he want to play bishop b7, and after bishop takes b5. Rook g8. Definitely in position still in preparation. I think their game during this match, the game beforehand was also the same variation or very similar. So one thing that I was like, I liked when I was following the game is, you know, watching Anand play dynamic chess is always a treat. So this position, black has open lines, you know, good bishops. White has two connected pass pawns on the queen side. It's very sharp. It's very sharp. As black, you know, when you're looking at this, you have more center pawns. You got a good rook there. It's like you probably want to keep some pieces in the board on the board. You don't want to go for a pure endgame, because white has the, you know, two pass pawns on the queen side. But otherwise, yeah, probably, you know, bishop d6, king e7. You want to use the pressure against g2 to create something. On the flip side, if you do trade off some pieces, those center pawns you can push. Right now, I was like, yeah, it's a little bit risky to push e5 or things like that. As more pieces on the board, the king position might matter more. So it's hard to make some decision in this position. But in the meantime, no matter what, black has to improve pieces. Rook g8, the rook has to go to g8. Black is not playing the castle. Bishop on b5 is pinning the knight. Rook g8, it's a natural square for the rook. So both players still have to go through a couple normal developing moves before they really maybe figure out what they want to do. But in the previous game in the event, Anand played bishop d6 here. So rook g8 was the novelty at the time. Bishop f4, as expected maybe. And now bishop d6. I think a lot of people might prefer white's position here because, I mean, if black's attack doesn't like fully work, you just always have to worry about that center. Like for example here, Kramnik plays bishop g3 because he wants to trade off the bishops, but under white's conditions, because the g file is annoying. It is annoying. For example, bishop d6, queen d6, rook at ft1. If you have to always worry about g2, then probably black can play this move, or maybe now e5. But g2 is a very annoying possibility here. Then there's always this bishop takes f3. So the benefit of after bishop d6, bishop g3 is if black takes on g3, take like this, those tactics don't work anymore. That g file is shut down. So bishop f4, bishop to d6. Another move, which I think attention has to be paid, is like a move like rook d1. Bishop f3 is never possible to try to hit b5 because a8 is hanging, besides the fact they could take on d7. But yeah, rook d1 would be annoying. I hope after rook d1, again, people are not considering to strongly play something like e5. Just in the long term, that's going to be very unpleasant. So rook d1 could have been played as an alternative. So rook d1. And it was, maybe wanted to play maybe bishop c5 here. Just an example of why rook d1 might be very dangerous. Maybe here, something like b4, and things get pretty out of hand for black. So there's a few different options, and later on Kramnik did play rook d1 in the match, but bishop f4 this time. Bishop g3, and you can still play rook d1, so there wasn't necessarily a big sense of urgency. And now a very interesting move that I didn't necessarily expect was f5, really trying to force the issue and open up the g file. Yeah, bishop takes g3 would not be good. Shutting down the g file, which black badly wants. And now poses a pretty serious question for white, because f4 is coming, and you really do not want to now play bishop d6, or you don't want to admit that, because black gained the benefit of f5, which isn't a bad move at all, because it supports e4 and controls some center squares. So after f5, f4 is coming no matter what. Now Kramnik goes to rook f to c1. For example, rook f to d1, f4, which is what Anand's idea was, bishop to h4. We have this move that comes often in this opening, rook a5. And why is rook a5 annoying? Well, first of all, you're not giving this bishop up in positions. This isn't what white's not going to give this up, because black has a lot of pressure on g2. So the obvious move after here would be like a4. But why a4 is so annoying is there's a rook takes b5 exchange sacrifice, a b5 forced. If queen b5, bishop takes f, you trade queens and you play bishop f3. And after rook b5, a b5, position like knight e5, and everything is, the tactics are working a lot. So for example, knight e5, rook g2, king f1 is forced, rook takes h2, just simply rook takes h2, threatening, rook h1 checkmate, knight f3, rook h1 check. I mean, white's just not surviving. There's just no way to like trade things off or stop the bishops. It's just a long-term thing. So yeah, this would just be very, very bad for white. So there are some nice tactics starting to emerge in this position, and yeah, rook a5 is an example. If you were to move the bishop away, the same tactic would happen, even better. So, I mean, like let's say knight e5. Yeah, and something like this. Probably here you can do bishop takes g2 and f3 or f3 right away. It's just bad. It's just very, very, very bad. So after rook f to d1, yeah, that might have been something that Kramnik saw and was not thrilled to allow. An interesting possibility here was knight takes d4. The idea of playing rook d1 next. So no, queen takes d4, you don't want to be doing. Bishop takes, king takes, rook over. Knight takes d4, interesting possibility. f4. And I don't know how deep these guys were prepared, but after a move like f4, things it's really hard to to figure out what's going on here. You have to take, queen takes, king f8. One example might be here, queen f5 check. Well, see, it'd be nice if after, like, let's say bishop d7, white could take back with the f pawn and have a check, discovered check. But it's not working here, and black would probably be winning black would probably be winning here very, very shortly. Well, I just checkmated myself actually, but that's a checkmate. But yeah, there's some counterplay. I think white would probably try to go for a draw. Then queen f5 check, king g7. Yeah, it's a mess. It's a bit of a mess, but there probably is a perpetual here. So f5, rook, f to c1, f4, bishop h4. And now, quite a nice move here. I like this move a lot. Bishop to e7. The bishop has done its job on d6. Doesn't really have more of a future there, and it goes back to e7, trading that bishop off. I like that, and bringing the king towards the center. The same variation that I was talking about before, rook a5, maybe a4, rook takes b5. I think what was annoying about this variation was after queen b5. Okay, first of all, if you take here, this is almost checkmate. Queen has to go back. But if you trade queens, I think it's the same thing. That you can't take on f3 because rook c8 is checkmate. So that's why it doesn't work. The bishop on e7 is there's some checkmate patterns there. So bishop e7 is pretty precise. Kramnik plays a4 because he doesn't want to improve black's position. After bishop e7, king 7, black wants the king on e7. So now after a4, Anand does bishop h4, knight h4, king e7. And so material is still even, and it's still totally unclear. I like black's position for sure, but you have to maintain that sort of initiative here. Pawns on the dark squares, f4 and d4, and a light squared bishop. It looks well coordinated. And now what is black threatening? Next move. Rook takes g2, knight takes g2.
And rook to g8.
Yeah, that's an important point. So if it was black to move here, I'll just demonstrate that. Rook g2, knight g2, no, not f3. So the rook to g8. Right. Rook g2, what if f3, what was the plan here? Pawn up, queen f2. Maybe it is f3. So it's an idea, but it's not, it's kind of position specific whether it works or not, but it's definitely something both of the players are considering here. Rook a3 was chosen, which is a nice multi-purpose move. It can help on the king side, can help in the center. Rook a to c8. The tactics aren't working. The rook isn't doing too much on a8, but black decides to trade it because I don't think really sees a better square than trading it. I mean, you'd maybe be tempted to double rooks on the g file here and put some pressure on g2, but it looks a little risky. I mean, just to put everything on that. Maybe white can just react with f3. You don't really, if you don't contest the c file, black may always have to be worried about white playing rook c7 at a certain point if the queen isn't protecting c7. So it's interesting because again, though, if this was just a pure pawn endgame, then you want to be favoring the two outside passed pawns. So to what extent are you willing to trade pieces as black is definitely a question here that you have to constantly be thinking about. Because, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of black's counterplay is based on counterattacking, and white can't really get a nice setup going on if they have to deal with g2 all the time. So black concedes rook a to c8 now that the rook a5 tactics don't work. Kramnik goes for this. He's like, yeah, less pressure on g2 one way or another. And I was surprised by this. Center pawns are really nice, but I just didn't really see good situations where black could utilize that. At the same time, white's knight is on h4, rook is on a3. White's not perfectly coordinated either, and that bishop on b5 might start looking a bit superficial soon if it just stays there and it doesn't take on d7 or do too much. Then it might end up being missed out in some sequences. I was doing a lecture yesterday on kind of keeping pieces on the board, or a couple of days ago, and after rook c8, definitely rook c1 could be something to be considered. Rook d1 to rook c1 to d1. I don't think white's forced to take on c8, and this could I don't think black can use the c file to do anything special. So I think rook d1 would have been a very playable alternative here. Yeah, maybe double up. Yeah, maybe double up on d3. Yeah, rook d1 might have been a better try. Instead, rook c8, bishop c8, and rook a1.
White with the bishop?
Oh, sorry, rook takes was played, yeah, my bad. Rook takes c8 and rook a1, so covering the back rank. And now a nice move by Anand, which he must have seen before going into all this. Oh yeah, I just want to mention, knight f5 check is never really working. Black just plays like king f6, so, and white doesn't have a follow-up check. So after rook c8, rook a1, I really like queen c5. You know, the queen is white can't get b4 going. It takes control of the c file, and it also has options to swing over to the king side. It's a very versatile square. Maybe queen d5 as well, right? And lining the queen and bishop up. But queen c5, queen c5 seems like a nice move, improving the position. I'm not sure if black's going to play queen c2, but it just leaves white has to anticipate a lot of different queen moves, and that's not easy to deal with. Kramnik played queen g4 here, which not entirely sure. Move like queen d2, maybe trying to hit f4 and play b4, might have been preferable. Queen g5 here, queen takes d4, and d7 is hanging. Probably queen d6. Let's say rook a d1. This might have put black under a little bit of pressure. The problem is the tactics are quite often in black's favor after knight e5, because you're not playing e5. If you do queen d4, okay, that doesn't work, right? Check. It's not too hard to see after bishop a6. But how do you free up space for your king? Is a move like h3 really desirable? Like it also has some drawbacks, whether that be f3 here. It's not a long-term real safe square. That's I mean, okay, I'm not sure if black can play f3 here because maybe queen g5 check, but h3. This h2 maybe accentuates a move like rook g8. Like I was thinking, maybe like queen d4, some sort of. Knight takes, knight f3 check. I want to do. Knight takes g2. It's yeah. Kramnik played queen g4, queen e5, queen e5, protecting the pawns and centralizing that queen. It can defend, it can block checks with f6. All the basics. It's putting the queen on the dark squares, bishop on the light squares, just kind of, yeah.
And knight f6, and he's starting to bring the book.
Yes, knight f6 and rook g8. Yeah, right now, it's on, white, black's rook looks a little better than white's rook, and after knight f6, rook g8, it looks like it'll be a lot better. I mean, as white, I think you don't mind getting the queens off in this position, but once again, not easy to see how white can get the queens off. It's like one of those positions, looks like the tactics are favoring black. A pure endgame might favor white, but that's a really hard endgame to get. Until then, the tactics look like they're favoring black. Knight f3, queen f6. Well, you do want to get the knight away from h4. The knight on d7 is better than the knight on h4, so brings the knight back into the game. I think the only losing move here might be a move like bishop f3, giving up the bishop, letting the a-pawn run. That's something. The bishop on b7 is really such an important piece for black, so just want to make sure nobody is giving that up. Queen f6. What's wrong with queen g5 here? Because I was saying, you know, maybe white wants to get the queens off the board. Because even, for example, queen g5, bishop f3, queen takes, knight takes, pawn takes. Yeah, you doubled the f pawns, but I don't think white's too concerned by that.
There's two passed pawns.
Two passed pawns should run, should be just.
The bishop.
Did you have a point, Arjun?
Queen g5, knight g5, rook g8.
And rook g8, yeah. You know, h4, h6, no matter what, rook takes g2 is coming. If bishop d7, you just play the cool rook g5. Maybe defend. You know, it's going to the end game. You got the two passed pawns, but just white's a little too slow in achieving that, right? It's just black will be up too much. So a4 is still a long way from a8. So Kramnik can't rush the position yet. Plays rook to e1. What's interesting is I believe Kramnik was playing for a win still, or still fighting. I mean, he was down, you know, one game, and this was in the middle of the match. Bishop takes d7, king d7, maybe knight takes d4. Yeah, you don't want to take the queen. I would find it, I think black is okay, because you have so much counterplay, but and he's down a pawn. Those pawns will be hard to push on the queen side, but let's say king e7, moving king out of the way. Let's rook d1, rook c4. Black is getting a lot of counterplay. I'm not sure if Kramnik, like what he was, but like if he was playing for when you wouldn't want to do this, because it feels like black should be able to find ways to hold pretty easily. But I don't think white is in. I don't think white is in a lot of danger when black's pawns are all on the king side. When you have a bishop, you want to have pawns on both sides of the board. Stretch out, but you know, like it's not the worst endgame to enter here. So
You have a bishop.
when you have a bishop, you want pawns on both sides of the board, your pawns as well, so you can stretch out the position. The bishop can kind of like control two sides of the board. A knight can't really do that, so that's why bishops are favored in open positions, and usually open positions will have activity all over the place. So yeah, yeah. That was a possibility. Played rook to e1. Maybe that's stopping knight e5. Because we look at a position where knight e5 gets achieved. I don't know. Let's say h4. How would we treat this as black? Well, I'm curious how that position is looking like. How desirable it is to go for this. Once again, you can't rush it as white. Rook c5 and you pick off g5 and a5 is not possible yet. Don't want to rush it, but this position, is this better for black, better for white? What is the evaluation? It's pretty hard to tell. It must have been hard for the players to figure it out for sure. I think black has to be happy to get a lot of activity, but I'm not sure black can claim too much. Yeah, you wouldn't want to put your pawns on light squares. That would be on the same color as your bishop and should be a little bit loose. But just a position like this, as long as, I can break down pretty simple, as long as white cannot push the queenside majority, black's probably better because black has that center presence and can use their own pawns. So, you know, as long as the queens can't be traded and we just have this position with queens and bishops and rooks on the board, then black should have some fun tactics available. White needs to try to get into a position where you can slowly try to get progress on the queen side. because otherwise I think dynamically the position is favorable to black. And he has more pieces in the middle of the board and towards the kings. Anand plays rook c5 here. He really wants knight e5. Because you have other reasonable moves, rook c2. Maybe b4. Now a move like rook c3, threatening bishop takes f3. Little annoying for sure. I mean, for example, let's say bishop d7, king d7. I think the tactics are just favoring black here, despite those two pawns on the queen side. You can't play knight e5 because the queen takes e5. Let's say play h3. It's still a long way to go before those pawns. Yeah, those pawns still have a ways to go. I don't even think king e7 is necessary. But Anand went for rook c5 instead.
Because he wants 95.
Looks like he wants knight e5 because he's not getting rook g5. I think knight e5. I mean, it has to be knight e5. Yeah. I mean, I guess objectively the position is still fairly balanced if they play accurately, and Anand, if he gets knight e5, everything gets traded off. Like let's just say h3, knight e5. Let's just, because we need to know if this is good, because he's going for knight e5. Well, I think black is okay, but it shouldn't be more than that with a pawn on weak pawn on f4 and just queens and bishops.
And there's two that's over there still.
Mm-hmm. But b4. Well, Kramnik was like, okay, I don't mind going into this position. Just an example, let's say knight e5, which wasn't played.
We get in the same position except the two inside points.
Yeah, I don't think Anand would be too thrilled to have a position like this. So it's unclear if he played rook c5 just as to bait knight e5 and to provoke b4, or he's actually going to do it. Because I don't think he's going to do it. Like here, this should be good for white. Like even a position like queen check. Well, I was looking at something like this, and queen f4, and the outside pass pawn is still an asset in these type of positions. Probably something really sharp would be happening in this type of race. It gets pretty messy. Might be in the best interest in some variation like this to just make a draw.
Yeah, he's already up a point, you said too.
He's already up a point. Also, I mean, this position, I can, I'm sure I'm making analysis mistakes because this position engines will eat up. This is just pure tactics. The last 20 moves, the whole position is just very, very tactical. So, the players themselves are probably, looking for ways to make it easier to understand, because otherwise every single move, you've got to watch out for certain things. It gets pretty tiring. After b4, it goes to rook c3, which wasn't available beforehand, which is why I'm not sure if rook c5 you really want to play knight e5 or is kind of trying to provoke b4 to get this c3 square. Because now bishop takes f3, knight e5 is a threat. The queens are on the board there. You can give up the bishop if the queens are on the board. Right, that is knight e5 here, game over, knight takes f3. But it's queens are staying on. Kramnik made a blunder here. Knight takes d4. Knight takes d4. It is an annoying position to deal with, but once again, I think if you're white, you got to be looking towards bishop f3. Sorry, avoiding bishop takes d7, king takes d7, and playing this sort of position.
So you got that one in the center.
Yep. Maybe moving the knight somewhere. We've looked at this position before. I think black is totally fine, but white also, black is preferable actually. I mean, I think Kramnik looked at it. Black's I think a little bit better here, but I don't think it's enough to push the position too much. Because even a position like here, I'm not too concerned about bishop takes f3. It messes up white's structure, but with only a queen and a rook, I don't think that's going to be a big problem.
The as part is the black king closer to the pass pawn.
Yeah, yeah. But knight takes d4 is played. Oh, not in this position, but here, knight takes d4. Also could have played knight d2 once again. Trying to, you know, play maybe knight e4 at some point, or just avoid bishop takes f3. Like knight e5. I think that queen e2. Still not clear. Still not clear.
But taking is a blunder.
The knight takes d4. The idea of knight takes d4, I hope you guys see queen takes d4, is rook d1. What to do is black here?
We didn't take, did he? The queen took?
Yeah, queen takes d4 happened. Well, if queen doesn't take, black is in big trouble here. Down a pawn, that was an important pawn. There's no more like rook g2 threats, bishop f3. White's advanced the b2 pawn to b4. I mean, a move like knight e5 here is queen e2.
I'm just trying to see a way out for after the queen takes and the rook moves over to
Yeah. What happens after queen takes d4 and rook? Yeah, queen takes d4, rook d1.
Knight f6?
Yeah, queen takes d4, rook d1. You have knight f6. That's the issue with the position, so knight f6. So if the queen moves away, well, the queen can't move away, then you're just down a piece. So knight f6. No, not knight e5. Does not do the same thing. The right idea, but you do give up a check. So it's knight f6. You can't move the queen now because then black just moves their queen away. So rook takes d4. Knight takes g4. Rook d7 check. No, there's no back rank. King f6. Rook takes d7. And now?
Rook c1, bishop f1, knight e3.
Yeah, exactly.
Slow down, wait.
Rook c1 check. Bishop f1, and if black doesn't have a tactic here, you know, a5, a6, a7. But knight e3. A nice pattern. It's the first time I had seen it when the game was played.
Why can't they take?
You can take, so I think that's what happened. It took on f3, took on e3.
I thought white was down there.
In this position, but he took first. Yeah.
I'm not going to play you next tournament.
Yeah, and there's no way to stop e2 or the back rank. But for the most part, like to me, I'm okay. I mean, obviously, like chess is like they get into a tactical position, and Kramnik made some blunders, but the position always had a lot of tension. So at a certain point, he kind of just cracked. I think the position was pretty balanced for most of it, and
like baiting that.
It looks like rook c5 turned out to be quite successful to get rook c3. I mean, it definitely led to a blunder right away. But yeah, I'm not sure how concerned you have to be about knight e5 as white. But I liked the idea of rook c8. It turned out, you know, turned out pretty good. But it is not too easy to change gears. You know, black's compensation was here on the g file, for example, and some tactical threats. And then after rook a3 is like evaluates position. I don't see a way to continue that, or it's not worth it to commit all my time to that. So I'm going to play rook c8, and I think rook d1 should have been played, just to keep the tension in the center. Probably my type of preference there, but otherwise just a very sharp game. And this was like, you know, Anand has made a career out of playing these sort of sharp positions very well. So, and he's doing it in the candidates right now. So we shall see what happens. But